This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. I'm here in Vancouver this weekend to cover a conference on Sunday, and then following that on Monday I'm going to be traveling to Chantilly, Virginia to cover the annual Bilderberg conference. But while I was here, I just caught word that Zbigniew Brzezinski has just died, so today I just wanted to quickly shoot a vlog to give you my thoughts on that. Now, in order to confirm that this information is true, I went online and did a quick search, and sure enough, a whole bunch of articles started popping up from every mainstream media outlet you can imagine, all saying a very similar thing. Mainly, the point was, former National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter has died. Pretty much every single article was referring to him as just that, the former National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter. Well, either they are completely unaware of the power and influence this man held behind the scenes, or because they are the mainstream media, they are involved in the cover-up of what this man was actually involved with. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, and some of the things you may not be aware of in regards to Zbigniew Brzezinski and his dream, his vision for a world order that would be brought about through global governance. Now, Brzezinski was onto this agenda right from the beginning. In fact, he's been an attendee of the Bilderberg group. This is a think tank that is very heavily involved in the plans for a formation of a world government. But knowing that that only deals with Europe and North Americans, Brzezinski was thinking bigger, and so he co-founded the Trilateral Commission along with David Rockefeller, because he wanted to be more inclusive, because the world order is going to have to involve the Japanese as well as the Europeans and North Americans, and everybody's going to have to come under this umbrella. But how would it be achieved? Well, Brzezinski was another proponent of this modus operandi known as order out of chaos. Some of you may not be aware that it was him who traveled in 1979 to Pakistan to rally up the Mujahideen there, to tell them that your cause is just. God is on your side, and you will get your land back. He was firing up, rallying up these jihadists who eventually went on to become Al-Qaeda. These are the men who eventually formulated Al-Qaeda, and it's because of men like Brzezinski in the late 70s that we saw the development of people like Osama bin Laden, who, as I'm sure you're well aware, was able to bring about order out of chaos. You know, and again, this can be tracked back to men like Brzezinski. And now, in his death even, he is still clamoring for this vision of a world order. In fact, I noticed his very last tweet on Twitter, the last thing he had to say to the world was this: sophisticated U.S. leadership is the sine qua non, not sure how to pronounce that, of a stable world order. However, we lack the former while the latter is getting worse. So I had to look that up, and I looked it up. It turns out it's a Latin phrase, meaning this is crucial, this is absolutely essential, this must happen, essentially. So what he's saying is sophisticated U.S. leadership must happen. It's essential for us to have a stable world order. However, we lack the former while the latter is getting worse. So what did he mean by the latter is getting worse? Well, I think that his vision for a world order that he's been working so hard over decades and decades at formulating through the formation of a one world government is starting to crumble. Not necessarily starting to crumble, but it's like a house of cards that could be blown over at any time. It appears to have solid structure, but it is actually quite fragile. So he wants to ensure that his vision is carried out. And that's one of the points I wanted to talk about today, is that there is always, when these things happen, essentially a passing of the torch on to the next generation. And David Rockefeller has just recently died. Zbigniew Brzezinski just died. Men like the Rothschilds and Henry Kissinger are very, very old, and they're about to croak any day now. And there's going to be a transitional period. I think we're in a historical time where we're going to see a transition of power behind the scenes like never before, or perhaps it happens once every generation, I suppose, where the next generation of power-hungry psychopaths who haven't experienced wars yet, who are ready to pull the trigger, to have their moment, are now taking the reins because the former the generation of globalist power-hungry think tanks operating, orchestrating, pulling the strings, the puppet string pullers, as I often call them, are dying, and they're going to be passing this torch, as it were, on to the next generation. So when we see men like Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller dying, and the soon-to-be the Rothschilds and Kissinger and all the likes of them, know that things are going to get worse before they get better. Again, this next generation is just ready to take over and have their moment in the spotlight. So I think it's a sign right now that we need to double our efforts, triple, quadruple our efforts in the face of this transitional, historical shift of power that is taking place right now behind the scenes, where this vision, this dream for a world government brought about by global government, world order as he called it, can be achieved through their ancestors, through the next generation. That's the goal. But that's why we have to, quadruple our efforts to expose this to the world and let people know this is the true agenda here. Sounds like a good thing. 7.5 billion people on the planet coming together. But what I advocate for is 7.5 billion individual sovereign thinking citizens, as opposed to one singular consciousness unified under a world government, as was the dream of Zbigniew Brzezinski. So again, this man just passed, but his dream will carry on through the next generation. And if you want to get involved, you can. This is the thing about the time that we are in. We have to take advantage of it now while we still can. You can start a website. You can start a YouTube channel. You can use the camera that's on the front of your phone that I'm sure you have in your pocket to do similar things that we are doing here, to get this information out to the world before it's too late. So if you want to help us in our efforts for that, you can check us out at patreon.com/pressfortruth. And we're going to continue to expose the agendas of these international globalists and their plans for this world order. And as I said, as these older generations continue to die off and this new one picks up that torch, it's going to be our time to shine, essentially. I mean, they call it the eternal flame. But all throughout history, while this eternal flame is being passed from generation to generation, there's been a resistance right there along with it. And that is continuing to grow as well, and we hope that you will grow with us. So check out the links in the description below, and stay tuned. As I said, on Sunday, we got a lot of great interviews coming up at Mining Investors Conference on Sunday, and then following that, I'll be heading off to Chantilly, Virginia to cover the annual Bilderberg Conference. So we'll have a lot of videos exposing who these globalists are, what their agenda is, coming up very soon. So be sure to subscribe if you have not yet. So stay tuned, folks. We got a lot more coming up soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.